Hi everyone, this is our second to last JenTalk for the class, and this time we're going to focus on formative and summative assessments. Assessments for learning and measuring learning. Many assessment types exist and can be used for varying purposes. Two of the most commonly used assessments are summative and formative. They sound like summative, which refers to the sum of one's learning, and formative, which refers to learning that is still forming or developing. Let's first talk about summative assessments. Although formative assessments are used before summative, we generally are more familiar with summative assessments. We have all taken summative assessments. Final exams and midterm exams, pop quizzes, term and research papers, culminating exams for the end of a year or the end of a degree or diploma, portfolios, artistic and creative works, maybe the culminating dance or artistic show from a class or a course of study, research papers. These are all summative assessments. Your CDP assignment will be a summative assessment for this course. Summative assessments defined are direct measures of learning, objective. They determine if learning objectives have been met. Summative assessments evaluate the sum of one's learning at the end of a learning period, whether that's the end of a chapter, a module, a unit, a class or course, a school year, etc. Now let's talk about formative assessments and define those. They are indirect assessment tools. They are in-process evaluations of learning. They're actually integrated as part of the learning experience. They're typically ungraded, or the grades, if they are graded, are not going to make or break your grade in a class or in a project. They are tools to provide real-time feedback to the teachers as well as the learners. Why? So they can evaluate and revise teaching to better promote learning. We use formative assessments when we're good, smart teachers. Some examples of formative assessments. Muddiest point writing assignments. The way a muddiest point writing assignment would work if you're in a face-to-face setting in a class is that for the last 3 to 4 minutes of a class, you'd ask the learners to write a paragraph or so on what was the muddiest or most confusing point in that class session that day. 1-minute papers or 1-minute emails. These are also done at the end of class. Students briefly answer 2 questions. What was the most important point I learned? What question still remains unanswered? This is handed in to the instructor. As you write your answers out to that, first of all, the learning is reinforced because you're writing what that most important point was. Also, as you express what was confusing, you are helping yourself understand what it is you still need help with and communicating that to the instructor so that they can evaluate how they're teaching and come back to the class, or maybe to an individual if they're the only one, and help them learn that topic in a way that makes sense to them. One-sentence summaries is another example. Students are asked to summarize their learning in 1 sentence. 1 sentence to summarize it all. This can actually take longer and be more complex than one might think. It can be a good formative assessment because it really tells the instructor what is being highlighted, at least for the learners, and it forces the learner to summarize what they just experienced before they leave, cementing it a bit for them. Word journals. In word journals, students choose 1 word to best represent the book that they were assigned, a class session, an article, maybe an experience that they had in a class or in a learning environment, and then explain why that 1 word was appropriate in just a couple of sentences, maybe a paragraph. Finally, application prompts, which are something that I am most likely to use. This is where we ask a student to write 1 paragraph or maybe a half-page real-world application of what was learned, so that everyone can take the theory, the concept, the topic, and explain how that can apply to something that's happening in the real world, maybe in current events, maybe at their workplace, maybe in their own lives. These can be done in person, at a distance, using paper and pen, or via technology. So they're all effective, great ways to formatively assess the learning, which really also assesses your own facilitation of learning. Formative assessments therefore prepare learners for summative assessments. When we do practice quizzes, we're really doing formative assessments, getting ready for what might be on an exam or a quiz. They actively engage learners in the topics and concepts or skills to be learned. Instead of it being a one-way learning, hoping that they remember everything before they're asked to know them, in a summative assessment, they're practicing it, engaging in the content, and really having a dialogue, even if it spans over more than one day, as instructors read what they've learned and then follow up with new learning. Formative assessments communicate learning progress also to facilitators of learning, or teachers or instructors, which is critical so that we can readjust, go back, move faster, or just learn what it is that our learners are focusing on, enjoying, and maybe not enjoying. Balance. Formative and summative assessments together are ideal. They create balance in a class. When formative assessments are present, success in summative assessments increases. Let me say it again. When you have a learning opportunity, a one-day training, a one-hour training, an 8-week course, when formative assessments are included, students are more likely to be successful in their final exams, quizzes, and projects. Both formative and summative assessments can be applied to face-to-face classes, short-term seminars, classes spanning several weeks or months, on-demand or webinar-type distance learning opportunities. How might you include both in your curriculum design project? That's the question, and I'd like to see that as you're handing those projects in.